When people talk about Final Fantasy games, there are usually some games that are always at the top of the list. You've either got Final Fantasy VII with its groundbreaking visuals for the late 90s and unforgettable characters, Final Fantasy VI for its sprawling ensemble cast and operatic drama, Final Fantasy X gets love for its emotional story and modern production values for that time, and even Final Fantasy IV gets recognition for being the first game in the series to really focus on storytelling. But there's one game that almost never gets the spotlight, one that gets overshadowed, overlooked, and frankly underestimated, and that game is Final Fantasy V. Now, if you've actually played this game, you probably already know why I'm making this video, and if you haven't, well, you're definitely in for a treat, because Final Fantasy V has one of the most fun, flexible, and replayable gameplay systems in the entire series. The story starts off lighthearted, but gradually builds into something surprisingly emotional, and its legacy is everywhere in the genre. You just might not realize it. So in today's video, I'm making a case for Final Fantasy V, why it's one of the most underrated games in the Final Fantasy series, and why, if you haven't played it, you definitely need to. Before we get to that, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're not, and leave a comment down below. Are you a fan of this game? Have you played it before? I'm hoping that I can kind of convince you to play this game and pick it up if you haven't after this video. So let's talk about why this game kind of, slipped under the radar for so long. I don't know, it's interesting. So let's start with the biggest reason Final Fantasy V doesn't get the recognition it deserves: timing. Final Fantasy V was released in Japan in 1992 for the Super Famicom, but if you were in North America at the time, you didn't get it. It was skipped, passed over. Instead, Square brought over Final Fantasy IV as Final Fantasy II, and then jumped straight to Final Fantasy VI, which was renamed Final Fantasy III. Final Fantasy V, nowhere to be seen. That is a surprising amount of numbers, all within a span of a few seconds. It can be very confusing. This meant that for Western fans in general, Final Fantasy V was simply invisible during the Super Nintendo era. It wasn't until the late 90s, several years later, that we got an official localization in the Final Fantasy Anthology Collection for the PS1. By then, Final Fantasy VII had already become a pop culture phenomenon, and Final Fantasy VIII was the new flashy thing. And Final Fantasy V, well, it looked old. Even worse, it had a clunky translation, slow load times thanks to being ported from cartridge to a disc-based system. We did see a little bit of this with Chrono Trigger as well, if you know, you know. And the sad part is that Final Fantasy V actually did pretty okay in Japan. It sold well over 1 million or 2 million copies, and even now is still deeply beloved. But because of that delayed Western release, it never had the chance to build a fan base overseas. Games like 4 and 6 became classics with strong nostalgic followings, while Final Fantasy V became that weird in-between game that most people skipped or, haven't even played now. And when you miss a game in its prime, it's hard to catch up later, especially in a series as stacked as Final Fantasy. Now let's talk story, because this is where a lot of people write Final Fantasy V off. Yes, it starts maybe a little bit more comedic and lighthearted than other Final Fantasy games. You've got Bart's riding a chocobo around the countryside, there's pirates with a pet sea dragon, and a king with amnesia, a lot of jokes, and some lighthearted banter. It doesn't immediately hit you with tragic backstories or world-ending despair, yet. And for some people that makes it, feel a little bit more shallow, but I could disagree more. Final Fantasy V's story is really just like a slow burn. It gradually deepens, and as the game progresses, you uncover a more complex narrative involving interdimensional villains, ancient sealed evils, and the fading legacies of an older generation of heroes. There's an incredible moment midway through the game when you realize you can switch worlds entirely, and the stakes suddenly escalate. And then there's Galuf. Spoiler alert here, if you haven't played Final Fantasy V, I would recommend fast forwarding to the time shown on the screen so you can skip this incredible moment that is definitely worth not spoiling. So yes, Galuf's death, it's one of the most powerful scenes in the series. Yes, I'm saying in the series. It's not flashy, it's not cinematic, but it's very poignant and it's very earned. You come to care about these characters because the game lets you actually spend time with them, lets you laugh with them, and then hits you with a loss that feels truly personal. It's emotional in a different way than Final Fantasy VII's tragedy or Final Fantasy X's bittersweet ending. It's more grounded and more human. And even the villain, Exdeath, is memorable in a way that's kind of unique. He's literally a sentient evil tree made of cursed souls. And while that might sound a little bit funny, he's actually genuinely imposing. His final battle is surreal and chaotic, and his presence gives the second half of the game more of a sense of dread that contrasts beautifully with the game's earlier charm. And kind of, if you looked at my thumbnail for the video today, there is like a visual metaphor. You've got Exdeath looming off in the background, hanging over the void. Another thing that Final Fantasy V often doesn't get credit for is its world building, and it actually manages to pull off something pretty ambitious. It doesn't just create one world, it creates two and merges them in a way that feels both surprising and satisfying. You start like a traditional fantasy kingdom filled with castles and crystals and chocobos, all the classic Final Fantasy motifs. But before long, the narrative zooms out to reveal an entirely separate world with its own geography, history, and characters. And when the two worlds eventually fuse, it's not just like a plot twist, it's like a gameplay shift, opening up exploration in a way that feels earned and rewarding. Now, if we compare this to Final Fantasy IV, for example, which had a single linear path through its story and world, Final Fantasy V offers a bit more freedom and experimentation. There is a real sense of progression as the map evolves. Things change and new areas become accessible, as to be expected, and there are also secrets tucked away for curious players. You can revisit old things, maybe find new dialogue or new items. And yeah, the game really does encourage you to find these things as the world changes while you play. Now, it's not quite as open-ended as later Final Fantasies, but it gives you just enough room to feel like you're on an epic journey rather than being funneled from plot point to plot point. Final Fantasy V is more about mechanical world building. The geography, the dungeons, and environments are designed with gameplay in mind. Airship routes, warp points, exploration loops, it's all crafted to support your growing toolkit of jobs and abilities. It's a world that feels like it was made for you to play in, not to just watch a plot unfold. And honestly, that's part of the magic that makes me keep thinking about this game all these years after playing it for the first time. So let's talk about what makes Final Fantasy V actually amazing: the job system. The game here doesn't just have a job system, it has the job system. It takes the concept introduced in Final Fantasy 1 and even 3 and cranks it up more than you could ever believe. You're not just swapping classes here, you're building like hybrid characters. You level up a job to learn its unique abilities, and then you can mix and match those abilities with other jobs. It turns your party into a playground for experimentation. And the best part is that the game doesn't necessarily force you down one optimal path for your jobs. There are dozens of viable combinations, and the game encourages creativity. It encourages trial and error, and it rewards you for trying something new, even if it's like completely ridiculous on paper. This game has almost infinite replay value just because of the job system alone. And as you unlock more jobs, your party evolves. You start seeing these awesome synergies between classes, and before you know it, you've built a team that's like uniquely yours. It's like playing with a toolbox full of weird, wonderful parts, and there's no wrong way to use them. Incredibly satisfying, to be honest with you. So even if Final Fantasy V doesn't get the spotlight it deserves, its influence is everywhere. The job system has become a template for future games like Final Fantasy Tactics or Bravely Default, or even parts of other JRPGs you guys know and love. That sense of open-ended class design where you're encouraged to think outside of the box, I mean, that really started here. Even modern RPGs with flexible character builds owe a little something to Final Fantasy V's DNA. The Pixel Remaster version finally gives Final Fantasy V a modern release that, looks beautiful, sounds amazing, and plays like a dream. It's never been easier to experience the game in its best form, and yet it's still flying under the radar. It doesn't really trend on social media, it rarely shows up in best of lists, but for those who know, it really is a classic hiding in plain sight and is easily the most underrated Final Fantasy game. Now hang on, before we get any further in the video, did you guys know that almost 87% of the people that watch my channel on the regular are not subscribed? So if you want to keep in touch with my regular weekly JRPG videos, ranking videos, reviews, discussions, retrospectives, hey, hit that subscribe button. It's free and supports the channel quite a lot. So let's talk about one of the most underrated parts of this already underrated game. It's the music of Final Fantasy V. I love the music in this game. Now, as a massive Final Fantasy fan and a musician, I cannot not talk about the amazing soundtrack of Final Fantasy V. This is one of the most quietly excellent parts of Final Fantasy V, and it deserves way more appreciation. Now, of course, as usual, composed by Nobuo Uematsu, the soundtrack might not get mentioned as often as Final Fantasy VI's or VII's, but it does have a unique charm and emotional resonance that fits the game perfectly. From playful overworld themes to intense boss tracks, Uematsu's work here does a fantastic job of reinforcing the game's shifting tone. For example, like the overworld theme, Ahead on Our Way, is bright, hopeful, and it's instantly catchy. It sets the tone for a story about friendship and discovery. And then there's the Battle on the Big Bridge, Gilgamesh's theme, which is arguably one of the most iconic pieces in the entire Final Fantasy franchise. It's so popular that it's been remixed and reused by multiple later titles in the Final Fantasy series, and for a good reason. It's bombastic, it's unforgettable, and of course, other cover artists have done renditions of it as well, like myself, for my own project called Turn-Based Volume 2, which focused on 16-bit era era JRPGs. I love the song so much that I couldn't not include it in that record. Please go check it out at the Bandcamp link down below. It is a free download, or you can support if you want. So, is Final Fantasy V the most underrated game in the series? Yeah, I think it's a clear yes. It's a victim of bad timing, weird localization, and unfortunate overshadowing. But beneath that is a game that is bursting with personality, depth, and freedom. It doesn't try to be like the most serious Final Fantasy, it doesn't try to be the flashiest game in the series, but it absolutely succeeds at being one of the most fun and flexible games in Final Fantasy point blank. So if you're someone who loves deep mechanics, quirky but lovable characters, and stories that slowly pull you in, Final Fantasy V is 100% worth your time. Whether you're playing the Pixel Remaster, the other ports like the Game Boy Advance version, or even a fan-translated ROM, there's really never been a better time to discover, or maybe even rediscover, this underrated gem. So if you've never played it before, give it a shot. And if you have, maybe it's time for another run. Maybe with a team of berserkers, bards, and blue mages. You know, just for fun. The sky is the limit here. So that's it for Final Fantasy V today. I love this game so much. It really, honestly took me by surprise the first time that I played it. Really special game, unique game, great music, characters, story, and the Pixel Remaster is readily available for you guys to play if you haven't played it yet. So thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you again on another video next week. Bye-bye.